Welcome to another episode of the podcast where we talk all about tropes and things we love to hate about them. I am your co-host, Nikki McKnight, and I am joined as always by my partner in romantic crime, Meg Casebolt.
Romantic crime feels like it should. It's not some romantic suspense, but it would be like a really nice crossover.
I feel, okay, let's just workshop this a bit. Okay, so everybody loves true crime. I'm not into true crime.
Me neither.
It makes me really nervous. But I do love like capers and like thievery. So I feel like that could be a genre.
You want a heist.
That could be a thing that I vibe with.
You want a romantic heist.
I love heisting. I want a who's to heist all the time. They are the best. For me, like heisting heists is up there with like swashbuckling good times. So on today's episode, we have like a little mini series coming up. We have talked, you and I, Meg, a lot through these episodes about like tropes we love, tropes we hate. And one of the things I hate the most, I hate with the burning fiery passion of 1,000 suns. But, every so often I'm like, okay, I hate this one, but they did it, I think, quite well. So we decided to kind of do this little mini series. I'm tentatively calling it Trope We Hate, Book We Love. Where basically Meg and I each pick a book that is listed under a trope that is not our jam. I don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but like, this is not my jam. But somehow we found a piece of romantic fiction that we were like, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. I kind of liked it.
I think also like, I feel like romance can sometimes oversimplify the quality of writing by really distilling everything down into like, it is a trope about this. And we use the trope as shorthand for here's what the premise is, here's what the expectations are, here's what the author is trying to achieve. But one thing that I have found is that if I find an author whose voice and style and tone I like and like respect, I will chase them through tropes that would not normally be the things that I would pick up on the fly. So like, for example, you introduced me to Tal Bauer, who does quite a lot of sports romance and romantic suspense and it was because of my obsession with The West Wing. And you were like, I found you a West Wing bodyguard romance. And I was like, not my usual thing. Bodyguard is not my usual thing. But once I started that, I was like, oh my God, his writing is so good. I just need to read everything that he writes, even if it's not my trope. So I think that's part of what we're exploring is like, if an author sticks the landing, I will overlook the fact that it's not necessarily a premise that I would seek out.
That is so true. Like one of my favorite authors, and I've mentioned them before, is Onley James. And I was introduced to Onley James because of her Necessary Evils series, which is like, moralistic psychopaths and sociopaths who like, do like vigilante justice. And then I kind of started reading all of her other ones. And like one of her early series that kind of is somewhat part of this interconnected universe, it involves prison. So it covers inmates both while they are in and after they get out of prison, which is not normally my jam because the prison industrial complex makes me real nervous. And even reading about it makes me uncomfortable. But then she expanded recently into Omegaverse as like a serial that she's doing over on her Patreon. And I haven't gone fully into it. But again, to your point, I will probably give it a chance because Onley James is writing it. And it might not be completely my jam, but I am more likely to find something that within that writing that I do like. So who the fuck knows?
Right. It's more about execution than premise, right? And I think that's true for all things writing is like, you can have the best concept for a book, but if you can't make it happen, and that's why I sort of love the fact that romance does have these tropes is like, you can take the exact same idea for a book and hand it to 10 different authors and you will get 10 completely different stories.
And actually, I think that is a kind of a nice segue into the book we're covering today. So, it's almost like Meg did it on purpose. One of my most hated, I'm not going to say least favorite, it is a hate. I actively hate this trope. It's not something that's just like, oh, it's not to my taste. I'm like, no, I hate it. I wish it didn't exist. But, it got this book. So I do not like student teacher. It makes me so uncomfortable. I get so much ick. It's like, ooh, it's like sexy taboo. I'm like, no. because more often than not, it's hopefully more often than not, it's college students. So cool, they're at least 19. Like, I'm like, no, these are not like fully grown, evolved humans yet. They have no idea what's happening. So I do not love Student Teacher, but at the time I was reading this author. And this came out as a new series. I was like, I'll read it. Very quickly discovered it was Student Teacher, but decided, no, I'm going to keep going. So today's book is Kissing Tolstoy by Penny Reid. Meg, have you read Penny Reid before? What is your experience with Penny Reid?
I have read Penny Reid. I read, oh gosh, what's the series that she has with the like 4 brothers and a sister?
The
in
Winston
Tennessee.
family?
Yes, the Winston brothers. I read the entire Winston brother series. And I dipped a little bit into the crossover series in Chicago, the Knitting in the City series, but I didn't finish that.
Yep.
So I think maybe that book has like 6 or 7 and I read 2 or 3 of them. But then I hit a point where I was like, okay, I like the way this author writes, but I both want it to be steamier and I had some issues with characters getting like a little bit too goofy.
Yeah, so that's funny. So my first exposure to her was Neanderthal Meets Human, which is the first in the Knitting series. And that's the series I finished. I could not get through all of the Winston family one. But yeah, so like I feel like she writes pretty smart characters. Sometimes they get a little bit too smart, too absurd, too competent in a way that doesn't quite hit for real for me. But they're also meant to be super fun and relatable. And I just like the vibe there. I kind of just got tired of like the kind of like that same repetitive nature. But
and like I struggle a little bbit with small town sometimes because I think small town by its nature can sometimes get into like there's this Hatfield and McCoy's rivalry that's happening and we don't know why. And I don't always love those C plots that I like a C plot that will carry over a series, but like a C plot that's like we're trying to make it lighthearted. We're trying to turn what should be a romance into a rom-com by having this like there was another one I read, Claire Kingsley, I think, wrote a series that had a C plot runner through the whole thing where like the squirrels were sabotaging the houses and I was like, man, can I just like give me the couples, give me the romance. I don't need this like stupid people like training squirrels to go into the bar and poop everywhere. Like I don't want no.
You mean, what if it had been golden retrievers, Meg, sabotaging? Would that have been better for you that it wasn't squirrels?
I don't know. It's not necessarily a problem with the squirrels. It was a problem with the rivalry and the way that like the brothers were up again, but you know, and you're just like, I don't care. I don't care about this. And like small town gossip can be a little bit triggering for me where I'm like,
I feel that.
Yeah, I don't need these biddies all up in my business. Like, no, I'm
wasn't the random C plus in the Winston series, wasn't that like there was a motorcycle gang? Was that series?
Yeah, there was like
it was like Scarlet was one of them, and there was like the Iron Bones or some other very impressive motorcycle. See, actually, that's another genre I don't read too much is motorcycle club.
I will only read Kate C. Wells' Motorcycle Club because, again, it's one of those things where like once you find the author and you're like, okay, I wouldn't seek out Motorcycle Club, but I like her writing style, and I started with her. With a mafia, and then I moved into a small town, and then I dipped into motorcycle because one of the brothers was in the motorcycle, and so I've read a couple of those, and then I came back out and I went into I think she wrote some was it Omegaverse or was it just Fated Mates? Like so I've like moved through her world a little bit, but again it's like very much like sometimes I'll pick up a book that's in a series but not necessarily finish it because I'm like I stopped caring. But anyway, in the Winston brothers series it was like that was again a C plot where I think it was their father was in the motorcycle club, and so they had this sort of
he's dead or
their mom died. Their mom died, and that was the reason why the sister from Knitting in the City moved home. We did not prepare this at all, y'all. We're just sort of chasing the threads. But like their mom died, but then the dad was like sort of absentee father, but he would occasionally come home and just
involved in all sorts of illegal shit, and he would come home and take their money and abusive and
just generally like bad parenting. And that's I mean it does cause some really interesting trauma that can lead to you know things that show up in a relationship. So sometimes like as a writer I'm like, how many parents should I kill off here? Should I commit fratricide here too?
I was like, you know what? It just becomes like you're going to Disney princess all of your main characters. And just, give a little equality.
Give a little equality. It's true. And I think that's why, like, part of the reason that maybe I started the series from a family for me was like, I wanted one good family for them all to lean into.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that.
My Goldie Hawn and
So-
Kurt Russell family.
Oh my God. Okay. If y'all want to know what we're talking about, go back and listen to the episode where I interview Meg about Peppermint Bark No Bite. And I get really excited about who she chose as like the visual doppelgangers for all of her characters. So for Kissing Tolstoy, a little bit of background. This is from 2014. But, and I didn't know this, it was actually written as a newsletter serial first. It was like released over the course of her newsletter for like a year, and then it was kind of published into a book. And now that I've heard that, I can see it, because you can kind of, you almost feel with newsletter serials, like they kind of like not necessarily have to wrap up each week, but there has to be such like a hook for the person to be like, I want to read the next excerpt when it comes out in the next newsletter. So the original it was a shorter version. So the original version was not called Kissing Tolstoy. It was called Nobody Looks Good in Leather Pants.
That's a better title.
It was like,
it's just a better title.
Honestly. It was like 28,000 words. The final version here is 46,000. So, not quite doubled, but there's a lot more significant. And then this was eventually positioned as the first book in what she called the Dear Professor series, of which there were only two. Book 2 was Kissing Galileo. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. I hated that. It was just weird. The main conceit of the book I could never get on board with. So the rest of it just did not work for me. But the essential like log line for this book, and I find the log line really interesting, I do want to talk about it, is what do you do when you discover that your super hot blind date from months ago is now your super hot Russian lit professor? You overthink everything and pray for a swift end to your misery, of course. And like, that's literally the only description.
That's terrible.
So it is bad. Okay, and I want to start off with this. So the inciting incident of this book, we have our two kind of main characters. You have Anna Harris. She's 21. She's an engineering student at university. She also is a cosplayer. She also works at a server as a restaurant. She's also doing all these things. So she is an engineering student, but she loves Russian lit. She loves Tolstoy and Pushkin and all these things. So she wants to take this course at her university that is Russian lit, because she hears that the professor who's teaching it is like really passionate and very smart about this. Our other main character is Luca Croft. He is a 31-year-old professor of that Russian lit class. He comes from a Russian family who is quite prominent in their circles. So I want to talk about their meet cute, as it were, because it is so prominent in the log line of like, you're a super hot blind date. But this whole date is nothing in the grand scheme of the novel, which is why when I read that description, I was so shocked. So basically what happens is, I keep calling her Anna because it's Anastasia. Anyway,
you can do Anna. I'll take Anna.
I always go for Anna versus Anna. Maybe it's just because I don't like how the vowel feels. But so Anna is kind of like, she's hardworking. She has these dreams and ambitions. And her best friend is like, hey, you know what you should do? Go get laid. Go on a date. Here's the email address of someone I think you would vibe with. Like, I dare you, go reach out to this person. So she emails this person and says, hey, so-and-so, like, I was going to say recommended you. My friend recommended you as a potential dating partner. But kind of just says like, hey, this is really awkward. Yay. But her email is basically like, hey, I got this email, this is a little crazy, this is a little wacky, but like, do you want to meet me at this place?
Okay, first of all, her email sucks. It sucks. It's like, let me just throw in this random Tolstoy reference for absolutely no reason, just to seem like I'm a quirky little manic pixie dream girl. Love Anna I. Harris, but don't ask what the I means. Ha ha ha. Like nobody would have gotten this email and been like, I'm intrigued. Let me go meet this girl. Like, it was total bananas.
Yeah.
It was bonkers.
Yeah. So the funny part of this, so she sends this email, she goes to this bar, restaurant, or whatever to meet this person. And in walks this good looking, like leather pants wearing, I think he has his motorcycle helmet with him. So clearly he's a motorcycle riding person. And she's like, oh, he's definitely not for me. I am not someone who associates with like leather pant wearing people. And, he sits down and be like, I'm your date. She's like, well, this is interesting. And like, they chat very briefly. And he's like, I'm not this person. Because it turns out she did a typo when she sent her original email. And it's like, it went to, not to like Lucas Craft, but it went to Luca Croft or something like that. And he's like, I just wanted to see what this was. But then like nothing else happens. It's like, yeah, she left, he left because I am not someone who dates someone who wears leather pants. Like, but this is done in less than a chapter. It's such a brief interlude that for it to be led as like, to me, that's not even a blind date.
No,
Like,
this was a missed connection, if anything. And like she's
yeah.
so awkward. So like they have like a little bit of chemistry on Page, right? Where like
Mhm.
he shows up and he pretends to be her blind date because she said I'll be the one in leather pants, and then he shows up in leather pants, and apparently
Mhm.
that's the reason that they got together is because of leather pants. Even though she like doesn't wear leather pants ever again. But anyway, or she does, but doesn't matter. But then they sit down and he doesn't answer any questions about himself. He only asks like very
Yeah.
detailed questions about her, except like they both have moms who died or something because the matricide
Yeah.
of romance. Um,
Disney princess.
and then he's like, by the way, I'm not who you think I am. I just wanted to find out what your middle name was. And she freaks out and leaves out the back door. And that's it. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing about that that is endearing, that is charming. She's
Mhm.
just,
Yeah.
she's a weirdo. And he is like kind of taking advantage of her discomfort.
Yeah, it's so weird, and it's such a brief interlude so that afterwards, like, it's, like, first day of classes, and she's like, "I'm so excited to go to this class," and she starts talking with some people who are seated around her, and they're like, "Oh, aren't you excited?" She goes, "Yes, I am. I love these books. I haven't read this. I haven't read this." And they're like, "Oh, no, we're here for the hot professor. Like, this is a very challenging course, but we're all here for the hot guy." And, of course, the classroom door opens, and who walks in? Ta-da! Nobody saw this coming. It's Luca, who is her professor. Like, what are your thoughts on like this moment where like because he sees her, she sees him, all is unveiled now.
I
Like, oh, it's you.
It was 6 months later, he never emailed her back, they didn't communicate, like, she works in a restaurant, this very easily could have been just like, "She was my waitress once." There was no chemistry between them, it felt like, so it
Mhm.
didn't feel like that big of a deal, but, like, in her mind, it was, "Oh my god, I went on a date with him." No, you didn't! You bumped
You
into
kind
him
of didn't.
at a bar, and he didn't even buy you a drink, like, it was if anything, I would say it could have been considered a blind date gone bad, and that would have been better than a
Mhm.
mistaken identity.
Yeah.
I would have
It was
rather
just like
seen them like be actually set up instead of this typo thing. And then
mhm.
have it be like, oh, that was awkward. And now he has to grade my papers. Like that would have been
Yeah.
more of a power
Yeah.
imbalance, which I think would have been more interesting. But also like I didn't feel like it was that big of a deal that like she'd bumped into him at a bar and then 6 months later he was her
Yeah.
professor.
Yeah, so to kind of give you all like a quick overview of how the rest of this story unfolds at a very top level basis. Like, oh my god, she's in my class. Oh, she's really smart. She's very passionate about this work, and he's like this brooding poetic soul of some sort. And they kind of start like there's a weird flirtation that's happening. It's a little bit ambiguous as to what's going on. She writes him an email and is pretty much like, "I'm bowing out of whatever this is.
Wait, no,
Thank you
so
so much, but like I'm
th- she writes a paper and everyone else gets papers
yes."
that are like completely tons of feedback.
Full of feedback, full of notes, yes,
and
and she
and
gets
she gets
nothing.
like the letter B on the top and nothing, and she's very upset that he's
Mhm.
ignoring her even though she has
Yeah.
done absolutely nothing wrong, and he's ignoring her because he's
Mhm.
like his theory is like, if I pay attention to you I won't be able to pay attention to anyone else, which is a bullshit theory. But so he writes the B, she goes to his office hours and she's like, I'm tired of you ignoring me. And then he like kisses her and then tells her to leave. And then she drops the class. So that's, it wasn't even nothing
Yeah.
happened. It was like she was getting
Yeah.
mistreated.
Yeah, she just kind of felt ignored for all that she felt passionate about this subject. So, she drops this class. He says, "No, I've already signed you up again." She says, "Fuck you. This is weird." And it's like this weird kind of like epistolary back and forth for a little bit. And eventually, like, she decides to come back, but he's also decided that, yeah, I'm in love with her. So he goes to like his head of the department and says, "Hey, I'm interested in pursuing something with a student. She needs to have like a third party like grade her papers because I cannot be neutral about this. I'm kind of laying myself out." And then they have like this weird relationship that goes and that's kind of it. Like, woohoo, they're together. And then like his sister's in there somewhere, her best friend is in there somewhere. But like it's very, if we look at almost like the highs and lows of their relationship, it's like nothing at the beginning for this blind date. It's really up big with this like dramatic drunken email of like after she says I'm out and he's back and forth like I really wish you could reconsider, and she's just like talking in Anna Karenina like metaphors, and then just like this, and then it's kind of like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So like plot wise, this is very weird and ultimately amounts to a whole lot of nothing, which is why I'm surprised I actually like this as like a student teacher book.
So let's talk about the student-teacher dynamic, right? Because I think
yes.
maybe when I was reading this and I was going, what was it that struck Nikki about this that feels different than a typical new adult, new adult and college age and teacher student? Because all of those things, they're not necessarily required to be overlapping, but in this case they are. I could see that one of the reasons that I think that you've stated before that you don't like teacher student is the power dynamic. And Anna did a really good job of holding her ground, holding her boundaries, pushing back, and self-advocating. So when she felt like she wasn't getting the reaction that she desired from her professor, she went to him and said, I feel like this is inappropriate treatment. And then when he overstepped his boundaries, which he did as the, I'm going to say, adult in the situation, she did what she thought was best for her, which was to drop the class. She was willing to take the F. She was willing to walk away. Like, she really held her boundaries tight. And then when he decided, like, I'm going to pursue a relationship with this student who basically has ghosted me at this point, I'm still going to go through these channels. He did go through the proper channels.
Yeah. So and I think you hit the nail on the head of what I actually do like about this.
Yeah, so as teacher student goes, the power dynamics that we often see as he's grading my paper, he's in charge of my career and my success, like none of that was there. So I can, as I was reading it, I was like, I bet this is what appealed to Nikki, is that all of the traditional conflict that we see in this trope has been undermined and, subverted.
Yeah, and then you also, because of this, I think, you definitely hit the nail on the head. Like, for all that I, have, I don't even want to say problems with, but I have like interesting thoughts and tidbits, which I'm sure we'll discuss about Anna as a character and how she reacts in certain situations. I actually really appreciated the email that she wrote saying like, look, I am not willing to put myself in this situation where it is confusing. I'm bowing out. Like, go with God. Like, thank you, I'm done. And I really liked that because it felt like it was very direct. It was very calm. It was not, you did this and like, it wasn't like this kind of like whiny.
It wasn't Hazel Bradford writing a letter to Josh M where she's on painkillers and being like,
maybe just a little bit, but it also wasn't like, it wasn't passive aggressive in the sense of, I want you to push me on this, which is another thing I hate about this trope. That if one party just like pushes the other a little bit, then it will be fine. Like, the way that she wrote that email was very explicitly, this is closed. I consider this a closed matter right now. Now, of course, he took that as an invitation to go do what he did. But from her perspective, there was no waffling here. I'm going to say no and I'm done, but I really hope you push me on this. Like, to me, there was not that subtext. So I did like that because I hate a waffling heroine.
Totally. Like, I just found this quote where she said, I refused to be ignored. I deserved better. It was my desire for respect, control of my own destiny, and the sensibilities of my tender heart that ultimately made the decision. I guess I'll take the F, I said. My voice cracked with misery because I was a good student. An F wouldn't decimate my GPA, but it would make an ugly dent. Like, she's willing to take the consequences of walking away from this relationship because she understood that it was almost like a self-care decision, but she also didn't like destroy his career by being like, this teacher, like, I mean, if she had read it differently, or if she had felt differently, or if she just wanted to do this, she could have said, this teacher sexually assaulted me during office hours. Like, she could have used that as an out and really like messed up his life. Like, I have a friend who's she's a mechanical engineering professor at RIT, and she told me that she refuses to ever close the door to her office. Doesn't matter if it's a male or female student, doesn't matter how many kids are in the room. Like she's been like, I want to take the door off my office because I don't want anybody to make claims because like, you don't know, like that could ruin her career if somebody just like had a bad thought about her, it could ruin her career. Mm-hmm. And so she like Anna could have taken that route and been like, I'm not taking an F. This professor overstepped his boundaries with me. And she could have walked away from it without, you know, I mean, maybe it would have been difficult for her, but something else that, well, no, I'm not going to go there. You had something to say. We'll talk about that later.
No, but I think you actually just hit on something else I didn't realize until now is one, I liked how Anna was like, I'm done. But also this concept of taking an F, because it could have been, go have a conversation with him. And if he signs off on it, then you won't get the F, your GPA will be fine. She's hearing this from her advisor because she's working on her PhD. Like, hey, this is going to kind of, and she's like, nope, I don't even want to have a conversation. Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't think it really matters, but I also really admired her for being like, you know what? I'm seeing that this is the potential to be very bad, very damaging for me emotionally, that I don't even want to have to go have a conversation with him about, would you please just sign off on this? She's like, fuck it. No, I just need to cut this off because otherwise there will be this waffling back and forth. So I did really like that. And then when I look at Luca's side of it, when he's like, he went to his department head again, I think you really hit it. I liked that from the very beginning, that was like, that's no longer a thing. The power balance is essentially taken away. And because that happened, there is no potential for like a forced outing, which, you know, is another thing I fucking hate in any type of novel, whether it's like a queer novel or a straight novel, this idea of this illicit relationship is going to be discovered. Because then I sit during the entire fucking book going, when are they going to get found out? When are they going to get found out? And it makes me so uncomfortable. So this, again, I think for right or for wrong, how he approached it, in some ways, I think it was great that he was like, look, there is the potential for me to have bias in a relationship involving a student. It doesn't exist yet, other than that weird surprise kiss, which I don't like. But I am also going to protect myself and her by letting that not be a thing anymore. Before, so early on, as opposed to like 6 months down the road of us like hiding our relationship, and then I do that. So again, I was like, we just love clear expectations and people having a fucking conversation up front, Meg. This is what I like.
Yes, but right?
Yes.
Both of them had very clear academic boundaries, and they ran through the right channels, and they held themselves to a specific standard. But then when they actually got together, their communication skills were abysmal.
It went real weird, didn't it?
It went real weird. And part of it, I think, is that, like, I don't know if it was the author being like, I need to give this professor a backstory or what. Mm-hmm. But, like, okay, so he was this Russian literature professor. And he was tenured, but he got his tenure because his parents had an endowment with this school. His parents are very wealthy. They wanted to pull him back into the fold of, you know, I can't remember if it was running the family business or whatever. And he was like, no, I want to be a professor. And so they made this big endowment to get him this job. And so this I also didn't like in a power dynamic way, which is like, even if he had done something wrong, his career was never in jeopardy because basically his parents paid the salaries of the entire Russian literature department. It wasn't even him. Mm-hmm. It was like he was the savior of his parents secretly were the savior of this entire department. Right. So he was never in danger, which I did not like as a plot decision because it takes away all of that conflict. But anyway, so he's like, well, I don't want to be dependent on my father's endowment money. Yeah. I don't want to feel like my job has been paid for and bribed, even though I'm getting these great responses from my students. And I love being a professor. I don't like this hanging over me. So I'm going to go apply for a bunch of grants. And then I'm not going to have sex with my girlfriend until I get a grant.
Yeah, that one was weird. Actually, so let's talk about Luca a bit, because in some ways I really like his character. In other ways, I am so perplexed.
I hated him. I didn't get it. Right? I didn't get it at all. I was ready to walk away before Anna walked away. Like, he was so hot and cold, and she called him out on it, and his behavior never changed. He had no character arc or growth.
Because when we first meet him, it's this so-called blind date of like motorcycle, black leather, like cool, cold dude. And I was like, okay, cool. I like a broody hero.
You do.
Awesome. I do. And I was like, but then later, he is almost he's very poetic, very focused on like Russian, like the tragedy of the Soviet Union being that they killed so many of their philosophers and free thinkers. So he's actually ashamed of modern Russia in that they have like killed off art and killed off thinkers in pursuit of like this weird homogeny in their culture. So like, so that's really interesting. But then he is very cerebral, but he's still like leather pants and motorcycle. Now look, you can love leather pants, you can love your motorcycle, and still be very smart. But I was like, who is this guy? Like, is he a cool dude? Is he a nerdy dude? Oh no, he is someone who says to his love interest, "You infect me, body and soul, with primitive thoughts of claiming and conquering. I do not know who I am when I touch you. I am no longer civilized. I am blood and heat and lust. I barely recognize myself." I'm confused.
I feel like he was all over the place.
Oh, no, wait. Here's the other thing. So he says this to his sister, Dominica, because I think this is the scene where he and his family go to the restaurant, and it just so happens to be where Anna works.
Obviously.
And big Russian table and whatever. And Dominica, his sister, kind of realizes that, like, oh, there's a little something going on here. And it kind of, I really like Dominica. I wanted more of her because she seemed kind of like really grounded and calling her brother on his shit, but she disappears very quickly. So he says to his sister, "She smells like wildflowers and quiet libraries, redolent of peace and exuberance." And then his sister goes, "Dad wouldn't like that." And then he says, "No, I don't imagine he and Anna would get along at all. She is far too independent of both mind and spirit." Meg, what is your read on Luca in terms of like this motorcycle leather pant wearing badass and like this very poetic, somewhat pretentiously speaking professor dude?
When you said a couple minutes ago that this was a serial, I almost feel like maybe Penny Reid forgot what she'd written in the previous chapter. Especially knowing that it started as like, no one looks good in leather pants, so she had to put him in leather pants, so she had to make him look like this cool guy. Like, I think sometimes like we as creators come up with a concept or even a title, and we're like, oh, that's interesting, let me explore that. But especially if you're serializing it, it's possible she didn't know where she was going, and so she like wrote and released quickly, which I think can be a creative art form. But then the plot changed and she wasn't able to go back to the beginning and smooth out the problems inherent in it. Because if it was like, you know, my motorcycle is the way that I'm able to explore the world and get a break from this overprotective, you know, family, then I'd be like, okay, fine. Okay, I can see that. But then you can also have this poetic heart. But like, also like people don't talk. I don't care if you're a Russian literature professor. People don't talk like that. And I do love a well-spoken character. I think that people who are written in literature in general, not just in romance, do speak more clearly and eloquently than natural dialogue, which is fine. That can be a choice that you make as an author voice choice. But like this was, I just wanted to smack him.
Yeah, it was so inconsistent in tone that sometimes like it's actually kind of interesting. I think maybe I would have been okay with kind of like, I'll call it his flowery way of speaking, or it reads as pretentious to me, even if that wasn't the original intent. I think if they had made it more clear that it's like, if he was like Russian born, I don't remember if he ever says whether he was born in Russia or in
I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I know he said something like his mom was Ukrainian and his dad was, you know, like he definitely had roots there.
I feel like maybe if he had been brought up more Russian and him going into literature was like a little bit later in life, he's 31, but like, you know what I mean? So if he had still been brought up, because I find I mostly hear this type of language in people whose English is second language.
That's true.
Like in personal experience, and in books, I think we see it a little bit more too. Like if they're Eastern European, or actually a lot of characters that I've read who are from like the Middle East, like that have this beautiful tradition of like really epic storytelling. When they speak in English in the books that I've read, or actually sometimes even the people I know, they do tend to have like a little bit more of like an expressiveness in their language that kind of makes sense with. So I think if it had been made more clear that Luca was like, he is like Russian Ukrainian or whatever, however he was raised, he is very much a part of that culture. I almost would have like bought it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, and it goes back to this romantic trope of like, oh, the well-spoken romantic foreigner, like that, this other thing. But I think they almost made him like too American for him to speak like that.
He was too integrated.
This is a judgment on like romantic Americans. You're like, do you want a Coors? No, what do they drink in the States? Is it Coors?
Yeah, there's a Coors.
Do you want a Miller? It's Miller time, my effervescent and redolent romantic love interest. Like, no,
sunflower.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, you know, Luca, again, inconsistent. You know, it makes me wonder too, because this was a serial that was expanded into a novel. Like I think I said, she added like 15,000 words. I'm like, what were the parts that were expanded? Because some of the stuff that was missing for me, most of it was from Luca's side, like his family relationships. Like they mentioned his dad being this like big influence. He's not present. We see his sister for a little bit, then she very randomly disappears. This big feeling about the grant that he's after, and surprised he gets it. Like all of these things get started and then disappear. Like they're threads that start and then they get dropped very, very quickly. So I'm like, where was the space added? It certainly wasn't in the sex scenes because that doesn't really happen.
Where were they?
At all?
And you know what? I think this is why I stopped reading Penny Reid. Because it was just, I was about to say clean, and I don't want clean to be construed as purity culture of like language, but like the sex scenes would either get cut off or closed door. Sometimes, not always. And I was just like, come on, like sex scenes as a writing choice. Sex scenes can be a way to not just be like graphic and hot, but also a way to advance the relationship between the people who are in this intimate environment. Sex scenes can be a way to grow those people together or break them apart. And if you just like slow burn the sex scenes or do one and then like sort of just like withhold. And I felt like I got that a lot with Winston Brothers, where it was like they'd have like one hot sex scene and then they'd close door the rest. And I'm like, I just like if you're gonna set up the relationship to grow and you're gonna give me like one good scene, that's not enough to sustain a 100,000 word book.
No,
and not in like a like I want
more the porny stuff.
It's not like it's not even. I'm not gonna say it's not this way, but it's like it's not even just like the voyeurism of enjoying like a steamy romance, but it's like I didn't feel like there was a connection between them. And I think whatever the scene is that has some physical intimacy to it, whether it's, you know, a kiss or, you know, oral or sex or whatever the, like, I didn't even feel like I felt like they barely touched each other. They would just like sit on the couch and read poetry quietly. Like there wasn't a lot. And like, and Anna wanted more and Luca was like, meh.
Yes.
And they never talked about it. They never fucking talked about it.
No, they didn't. I love this idea of like sitting on a couch, like reading poetry to each other. I love it in theory. And it's kind of nice as like almost like a foil to people who are supposedly very sexually attracted to each other. It's like, cool. They're both. So my friend Jen is living with me right now while she's visiting Canada again. And we just started watching Love is Blind UK. So we're like 4 episodes in. And we've just gotten to the part now where like they're out of the pods and they're on the retreat. So they're in Greece, and obviously all the questions are they going to sleep together? Are they going to have sex?
They
so,
are.
You know, everybody goes into their villas, and then the next day, production is obviously so like, hey, nudge, nudge, did you fuck? And some people are like, one of them goes like, yeah, we had sex twice. It was great. Other people are like, there was some physical stuff. And somebody else was like, we just slept together, and it was great. We're not going to pursue the physical yet. So it was kind of interesting how people are reacting to this idea of like, what is emotional intimacy and then what is physical intimacy. So like, I kind of like when there are both sides to it, especially when your relationship started the way that it did. You're in this kind of very overwrought writing and reading kind of environment. So like, I love cute little moments, but I felt like Anna was being so clear throughout this book of like, hey, sex. Yes. And then if you notice, Luca would only like, good for him. We appreciate a man who gives oral, like did that a lot, like
not
almost
as much as I thought, though.
But considering like that he did nothing else, Like every time Anna had an orgasm in that book, it was from oral.
Yeah.
Which true for many people.
Sometimes it's the only way, but that's okay.
But that was it. There was nothing more. And Anna was kind of like, and it just reminds me again in this episode of Love is Blind that we were watching, that some people are like, if there's no physical intimacy, does that mean they don't like me? Or that they're not sexually attracted to me? Or that like, is there something wrong? You're already in like a very overwrought place where you've never met this person and now you're meeting them physically and you're married, you're getting engaged, whatever. With this, I was like, Anna's like, let's go. And Luca's like, sure, but we're gonna stop here.
And like,
Luca,
I feel like part of
shut the fuck up, dude.
No, shut the fuck up. Yes. But I feel like part of what I like about romance is seeing two people who are different people find a way to make it work together. And part of that is the emotional intimacy and the communication that needs to happen for them to get on the same page. And part of that is that if you have different libidos, that's going to be a problem. Like you have to match your desires and your partner's desires and your timelines and everything like that, right? Like that's part of the growth of the relationship is navigating both the emotional and the physical components. And I felt like they did neither.
Yeah. Okay. So
I don't think this relationship is going to last. That's what I'm saying here. I don't think this was a happy ever after. I just don't.
Actually, I haven't reached a decision on this yet because like I'm mostly on the ace spectrum. So like physical, for the most part, I can take it or leave it. It's all very person dependent. So like I can look at a relationship like this and be like, yeah, this is great.
But it might be enough for them. But Anna did want more. If it was just Luca saying, I'm good here, and she's like, great, I'm good too. They could have had a very beautiful sapiosexual relationship where they are like inspired and attracted to each other's emotional intelligence and intellectual curiosity. And that would have been fine with me if they were aligned. But she wanted more and he wouldn't talk to her about it. That was my problem. It wasn't like they should be banging. It was he's not telling her.
This makes me wonder too, like what, again, I really want to know where the plot expansion went with these extra 10 to 15,000 words. Like what was expanded? Because again, it wasn't sex, but like if the storyline had extended another 6 months, because you brought up purity culture earlier. My read on it was like Luca kind of was putting Anna up on a pedestal a little bit. Like she is so special. She is so beautiful. I have to take it slowly. I have to respect her. And really ignoring her wishes and autonomy in the situation. So like it did have like a little bit of that purity, I would say purity ring to it. Haha, double entendre. Because Luca did seem to be making all the decisions. And Anna, for all that she did have certain instances through the book where she was very much like, in that email, I'm taking it out. No, I'm not talking to you. I was like, Anna, where she kind of brought it up, I found in a circular way of like, why are we not banging? So I was like waiting for her to almost force the issue. Because she forced the issue early on by saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, girl. Like snaps for queen. But when it came to this, the thing that she apparently wants a lot and is with someone that she's in a relationship with, like insert cricket sound here. It's like a little, like nothing.
And like, I don't read a lot of new adult. And the reason I don't read a lot of new adult is partially because like the college environment is not something that I want to revisit as an adult. Like as a 40-year-old, I'm not that interested in going to college and like
you're not interested in frat parties and keg parties.
Right. Like I didn't really like it that much when I was living it. I joined the sorority. I did like I was in the clubs. I went to like it wasn't all bad. I enjoyed.
Oh my god, you were in a sorority.
I was Alpha Epsilon Phi, baby. But anyway, like I did it. I lived it. But it's not something that I glorify. This isn't like a Bruce Springsteen song for me where I can look back and be like, those are the best days of my life. And I also, as an adult, as a 40-year-old woman, like I don't like reading characters whose prefrontal cortexes have not been fully developed.
No, they're still going.
They're still babies. They're not babies, but they still have so much to learn about the world. And to an extent, that's what makes new adults so enjoyable to some people and so expansive is like
Mm-hmm.
the world is their oyster. And I remember that feeling of being 21, 22 years old and being like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I just am enjoying, like, I just want to take a Russian literature class because I love Russian literature.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something so beautiful about that. But I don't think that Anna was written as a 21-year-old.
Yeah, so let's talk about Anna because we haven't talked too much about her. So she is a 21-year-old engineering student. Apparently, she's working on her PhD. She loves jigsaw puzzles and she does cosplay and she works at this really high-end restaurant that I believe is attached to like a museum or an art gallery or something like that. So very rich people go there. Can I admit something kind of embarrassing to you about this book and Anna? We talked a little bit about this with Josh. And
Let me guess. You didn't know she was Black.
I didn't know she was biracial. Did not know she was biracial.
She was biracial?
Yeah, I read that. So it wasn't
so
actually.
I didn't notice it until her roommate, when she got drunk, her roommate put her hair in a scarf. And I was like, oh, is she Black? And then I looked at the cover and she was Black. But like, never is it mentioned. And it should have been, because that is like also a power dynamic that was not even discussed, and it should have been.
I know. So here's the funny part. So I had read this book a couple different times, or early on when it first came out, and then I read book 2. Anna is like a side character in that because this is about her friend. And it was in that book that her friend explicitly talks about Anna's like caramel skin, or I forget, her dark skin. I don't remember how she described it, and kind of went, Anna's Black, just like I did with Josh and Hazel's. Josh is Korean? Total facial blindness because I couldn't picture it. So then when I went back and read it again, the reference to it is so almost not there. They mention like her skin color in like that caramel-y type of way. Very, like, I think only once early on in the book. And then there's the headscarf or like the bonnet for her to go to sleep. It wasn't until I was doing even more research for this book that I saw reviews saying she's biracial. She's half Nigerian. And I don't think that's mentioned anywhere. So I wonder if that was in the serial or made more explicit somewhere else. But yeah, yet another time when Nikki's aphantasia rears its ugly head and I can't picture shit.
Well,
but I'm like, oh, no, someone's Black.
Because I don't have aphantasia and I missed it entirely because it's not clearly articulated. It's hinted at. And listen, I'm not saying that every time a character arrives on page, I need some sort of like family tree ancestry set up where it's like, oh, this person's half Korean and half this. And like, I don't need that. But and I appreciate that we can have a Black character or biracial character in which their race is not part of the storyline. I love that. Yeah. However, this is a book about a power dynamic.
And I hadn't even picked up on that until you said it. I was like, you're right. So, because we mentioned this a little bit in our episode with Corinne, or our C. Rochelle episode, we were talking about Micah and how she had to kind of do a lot of work on this scene with him and Ziggy on the planet where there's like this weird like pet master situation, and how does that affect Micah, who is Black? And Corinne, made the comment very similar to you that he's a Black character, but that's not all that he is. And I agree with Anna. Her being biracial is not everything that she is, but yeah, this concept of power dynamic, again, I hadn't even thought about it. I mean, like, I was like, especially when we start talking about like the Russian lit aspect of this, like if she's Black or has like a Black experience or biracial experience, like why does she love Anna Karenina? Which is like,
and it would have been relevant, right? Like, have you seen that visual of the circle of power?
Is it like the D&D circle of power? Because that is the first Google.
The Wheel of Power and Privilege, I believe that it's called. So it is something that I've been working on in my inclusion awareness and, things that I want to incorporate into my own awareness and my business is making sure that we can identify when we are in a place of privilege and when we're not, and to be intersectional in the way that we approach these things. And so we'll include this in the show notes, but basically it's this idea that there are so many different places in which we can either be in a privileged state or a lesser privileged state. And so there's this beautiful image made by Sylvia Duckworth, because I see it right there on the image she tagged herself. But it's this idea of every one of these characteristics that we have different tiers of power. So your citizenship, your skin color, your formal education, your body abilities, your sexuality, your neurodiversity, your mental health, your body size, your housing, your wealth, your language, your gender. These are all places that are a spectrum. And you can either be the closest to the center of this wheel of power, where you are in power, which is basically a white male, able-bodied, heterosexual, neurotypical, slim-bodied, property-owning, wealthy, English-speaking, cisgendered a citizen of your country, and that is like the most powerful space you can be in. And if you have any of those identities that are different from that, there are certain levels of marginalization that happen with it. And the more marginalized identities you have, the less power you have. And it is not the job of the marginalized persons to bring themselves up. It should be part of the job of the people in power to create a dynamic in which the marginalized voices can be heard and their stories can be told, etc. So, and maybe I'm not explaining this as well as I should, but the idea that
this is fascinating. I have not seen this before.
So when I was reading this, I'm reading it and going, okay, Luca is a citizen, even if he is foreign speaking, like having that second language, but he's still fluent in English. He's white. He has a graduate degree, which is also like very powerful. He's able-bodied, he's hetero, he's slim, he owns property. Like he has all of these things going for him. Whereas Anna is, darker skinned in some way. She is still a student. She may have student loans or not be as wealthy. We didn't know necessarily like what her body size is. She's renting. Like there are all of these different ways that it isn't just age gap. It isn't just this power dynamic of student teacher. To me, when I read now, I read all of these identities and try to say like, where is the power and how can the power be part of the plot, and this is just my author voice coming out and who I am, where I'm like, how can the person in power equalize the playing field for the person who has more marginalized identities? How can they support that person? How can it not be, oh, we're going out to dinner and I'm the rich one, so I'll pay for everything, but you can make me dinner. Like, what are the ways that we can make sure that this isn't a power dynamic happening here? And so for me, he never did any of that work for her. And not that he has to be like, oh, you're biracial and therefore, but like there was a dynamic there that was not considered.
Yeah.
In 2014, the conversation was different. Like this is a 10-year-old book, and maybe the conversation has moved since Black Lives Matter, since a lot of this has become more common. Maybe Penny Reid would write it differently now. But I also read an interview with Penny Reid at one point where people came out and said, like, you just wrote the whole Winston Brothers series and every single person in that is white, except for like maybe the first brother. And she's like, well, I don't know what it's like to be Black. And she had to do the work. And since then, she's started to do the work in her writing to say like, oh, there are Black people in the South. What?
Oh, no. So one of the things I think you said is interesting just about like this idea of like the economic ability, because one of the things I will love this book forever for is how it introduced or really reinforced the concept for me of patronage of the arts.
I did love this scene.
And I was like, that's why it's called Patreon, right? You are a patron of the arts by supporting. So Luca and Anna are having a conversation, and to very high level paraphrase this conversation, he pretty much says like, why are you doing a degree in engineering? You love this. Like, why are you not in this, I'll say industry? Why are you not a writer? Why are you not creating? Because like why are you not doing your degree in Russian lit? Because like you love this. She goes, yeah, but I also don't want to have to worry about money. Like engineering is a great job. It's going to pay me a salary, and that salary that I will earn will allow me to support my reading habit, to support the things that I want to do. It doesn't have to be a job, because, and like, to me, like as someone for a very long time did not consider myself a creative, for all that I am an actor and we're doing this and all these things. I do, from this book, I was like, yeah, that is my role. Like, I don't need to have a career as a writer. I don't need to be a content creator. I don't need to be a YouTuber. I don't need to be a podcaster. If at the end of the day, I can just be a patron of the arts, like that is such like a sick thing to do. I get to support people in them creating art so that I get to enjoy it. Like I get to enjoy all these books. I get to enjoy these movies. I get to enjoy the podcasts that I listen to. So one of the biggest things that I took from this book that I don't want to say I'm grateful for this book, but It is something honestly that I refer back to often. Like anytime someone's like, "Oh yeah, like go on Patreon." I'm like, "Did you know you're a patron of the arts if you're on Patreon?" Because we think about patronage as like think about traditional artists like,
It's
you
like a
know,
Lorenzo
the
de
Rembrandts
Medici,
and the
where
things.
it's like, I am going to
Exactly.
make sure
Like
that the
you
Sistine
have to
Chapel has been
pay.
paid for.
Yeah, and like essentially like artists would seek out patrons who would cover their living expenses, who would essentially pay for them to create so that people could enjoy like the fruits of their labor. So I loved when Anna said, "Yeah, I'm not going to this is not my job. I'm going to be an engineer because it pays really well. I'm good at it and it will allow me to have a lifestyle where I don't have to worry about this stuff." Like I
I'm gonna
really
read her
liked
line
that.
because I think it's really good.
Oh, yes,
I
please.
love to
Please do.
read, but I'm not a writer. I love philosophy, but I'm not a philosopher. I love art, but I can't paint, draw, or sculpt. I love movies, but I'm a terrible actor. Therefore, I'm a patron. And I also want to say that like this line stuck out to me as a writer, as an author, because I did just release my debut novel. And I had 50 people who raised their hands and said, like, maybe they don't want to pay for the book, maybe they couldn't pay for the book, it doesn't matter, but I will create on your behalf and share about your book. And that is my
Mhm.
goal. Like it was a patronage of time.
Yes.
And
Yes, because again, you don't have to be like a rich Medici to be like, I'm going to pay Michelangelo's living expenses. Your patronage can be in money, your patronage can be in time, it can be in attention, it can be in energy.
And this feels like a really good point to point out to people that if you love the show, come over to Substack and give us $5 a month or what, like $50 a year if you love the show. So that way we can pay for the software that we use to record the show. If this is something that you are hearing this and going like, I would like to be more of a patron of the arts, you can start with us and you can start with a lot of different podcasts who have this sort of crowdfunding ability.
I think a lot of us, if look back at the pandemic, what got most of us through the pandemic was watching TV shows, it was listening to music. So art is essential. Art is required for quality of life. So again, when Luca was talking about all of these like Russian philosophers and artists that have been killed during kind of like the Soviet era, and I took my degree is in Japanese, but I also I have an East Asian specialist degree, so I studied a lot about China and Korea and Japan. And one of the courses I took was 20th century Chinese history, and it's talking all about the Great Leap Forward and the Communist Revolution with Mao. They did the exact same thing. They rounded up different thinkers and they were murdered. And for some reason, the North American thing that came to me with that was the AIDS crisis. Like people often ask, like, why are so many people gay these days? Because I'm like, the people who would be grown-ups are dead.
Yeah.
Because of the AIDS crisis. So I love this idea of art and art being for art's sake, and you don't have to be an artist to support art. I was like, this is so good. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the book was this aspect of Anna. Other than that, she had interesting, we'll call them quirks, we'll call them foibles, but I did really like this and appreciate this very adult way of thinking for all that she is not adult in many other ways.
Yeah, she definitely fluctuated in terms of her maturity, and I think there is something like 20 something about that, where it's like there are moments where you can hold your boundaries, and there are moments where you drunkenly email your professor and offer a booty call. Like there's a lot of impulsiveness that happens at this age, and that's okay.
We can contain multitudes, Meg.
Booty call multitudes.
I love it. Okay, so to kind of like wrap us up on this book, like Meg, if you kind of look at this plot and all the things we've discussed, like what would be like your number one change for this to maybe not to make you love it, but like what do you think would be the most powerful change you could make in the story or in these characters?
I did really love the ways that they navigated the academic system. So that way they didn't have to be in secret. But then after that, things sort of fell apart for me because they didn't communicate with each other. I think if he had been more forthcoming about like, my professorship is paid for by this and I don't feel comfortable staying in the school. Like I feel like there were a lot of secrets that didn't need to be secrets anymore. And to me, that was uncomfortable. So I think for me, the book was not my favorite. I understood all the reasons that you loved it, but like I was reading it and kind of wincing and like rolling my eyes a little bit because there were so many things that just didn't work for me in this particular book. And then the landing just felt sloppy. So I think for me, it would have been just like a different level of communication so that way it did feel like they were on the same page. What about you? What's the one big change you would?
I think it really would have to do with like Luca's characterization, because I found him to be a little confusing, this like weird dichotomy between like the leather pant motorcycle ride. Like, did you ever see the Grease sequel with like Michelle Pfeiffer?
No.
Like Grease 2. It's not good, y'all. I don't recommend it. But like there's this mysterious figure and he's the cool rider. Because in the second one, Michelle Pfeiffer is like the Danny Zuko type. Like she's the leather wearing and whatever. And there's like this really cool motorcycle dude named the Cool Rider. So I feel like that's what like Luca was at first. And all of a sudden he was like, no, I'm this very poetic, like
tortured soul.
Like tortured soul. It's like, I feel like I would have, again, you can wear leather pants and still be very smart. But I think that he was too North and South Pole. I wanted to see him a little bit better because I think I loved it when he went to the dean, even though I didn't love some of his language when he did that about like, I would like to become intimate with a student. No, I feel like just, say that there might be some bias because I felt like he was deciding there was a relationship before they decided there would be a relationship. But regardless, I wanted to see him a little bit more even because I feel like if he was more even, then that would have solved my issues with like this quote unquote like purity issue. And they just would have had a lot more sex. That's it.
I mean, not everything can be solved with sex, but in this case, I think some of the major problems that I had with the book could have been solved with sex.
I feel like it might have been. So one of the things we often talk about is like, if what else would you recommend in this genre? I have nothing else to recommend in this genre because I hate this trope. So Meg, what do you have any recommendations for the gentle folks at home?
Okay, so there were things that I did really like about this book, but I have other books that do them better. So that's how I'm going to approach this, is if you want a heroine who is in STEM, who is dating an older man or fake dating an older man who has some sort of power over her, but he does help her career along and he does do all the right things in that way, I would recommend The Love Hypothesis by Allie Hazelwood. Heads up that it did start as Raylo fanfic and then sort of take on this new approach. So you feel that a little bit, like the male character's name is Adam, which I'm like, very clearly that's Adam Driver, the way that they approach it. And almost like you can see the Star Wars in the academics.
But is he wearing high-waisted pants up to his nipples?
Sadly, no.
Like Adam Driver did in the movie? Oh, okay.
But I think there's also, because of the age gap inherent in that, we do have a slightly less mature heroine that drove me a little bit bananas, but also was age appropriate for what the expectation was. And there were also some class struggles in that. So that was the closest correlation that I saw. Another book that I really liked that is in academia, but I think does a better job of exploring the relationship and the power dynamics. And this is like, I don't know how I haven't mentioned this book yet. This is like one of my top 10 favorite romance novels, is Hold Me by Courtney Milan. It is a You've Got Mail trope. It has a transgender heroine. She runs a science blog where she games out all of these apocalyptic endings of the world and then scientifically breaks down what would happen. And the male character, Jay is his name. He starts commenting on the blog and then they switch to DMing and they have all these really beautiful conversations behind the scenes, starting with this apocalypse physicist side of things. And then we discover as the readers that Jay works in like a quantum theory lab with Maria's brother. So it's best friend's brother.
Oh my God. It combines in with like your favorite one.
It is my catnip. It is so good. I don't know how I haven't talked about it, but like Hold Me by Courtney Milan is, I could read it. I could read it and then I could restart it at page 1 and read it again. And every time I would learn something new from it.
Oh, I love that.
Highly, highly recommend that one, especially because they are academic and she's trying to make a decision about what to do next in her career. And he has this tenured professorship and there's a lot of tension in that is handled very maturely. He's not her professor, so that helps. And then okay. Love that. It's so good. And then my final recommendation, if you liked this, he's an academic and he's being pulled back into his family's business and trying to escape from that sort of anti-capitalist vibe to this book. Cannot say enough good things about Christina Lauren's The Paradise Problem.
Ooh, I've seen the title, or I've seen the book cover for that a lot on social recently. I have not read it yet.
So it is, he is from an incredibly wealthy, like billionaire family. They run the sixth biggest grocery store chain in the country. And his father is the CEO of the company and a complete narcissist. And so our main character, Liam, the grandfather started the company, and he had a clause in his will that every one of the kids would inherit $100 million after they'd been married for 5 years. So Liam decides that he wants to leave the company, but he needs to start accessing his inheritance. So he marries his brother's friend. Because they need graduate housing, because now he's left behind his fortune. He's left behind the family business. He needs to live in graduate housing. He finds this girl who will marry him. They're roommates for 2 years while he finishes his PhD. And then he moves out, and they don't see each other again for 3 years until his little sister's getting married. And his mom's like, we need to meet your wife. You need to bring her. And so they get back together. And they fly from LA all the way to, I'm going to say, Indonesia, to the super tiny island in Indonesia, off like closer to Singapore. And they are now basically like fake married, but have to pretend that they're real married in this like boiling kettle of just opulence. And, you know, there's pressure from his dad to come back into the business, and there's sibling rivalries from his other siblings. And it's, in all of this, he's struggling with this sort of like, billionaires should not exist, eat the rich vibe. And his wife, like, just got fired from her job as a convenience store clerk for stealing a pack of gum. Like, she has nothing. And so you get her perspective of this incredible wealth that is just destructive. I have never read something this anti-capitalist from a traditional publisher. It's so amazingly eat the rich that I couldn't believe that it had been traditionally published.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. That's a little surprising. Yeah, we love like a good anti-capitalist movement. All right. Well, before we head into our final question, a gentle reminder, go check us out on Substack at First Dates and Soulmates. We are on all the Instagrams and TikToks, as if there are multiple ones, at First Dates and Soulmates. And we would love it if you would take about 30 seconds of your time to head on to your podcast provider of choice and give us a good little star rating, a little review, and hit that subscribe button. Even if you listen in Substack, doing that on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify is such a huge algorithmic mystical boost. Helps more people find us, which is always great because, you know, I'm a theater kid. I love an audience. Give me all the folks. So Meg, who or what are you shipping this week?
I'm shipping beta reading. Both as a creator and as a supporter. So I'm in the process with my second book, with the sequel to Peppermint Bark, where I'm starting to bring in beta readers and making adjustments to the manuscript based on their feedback. And sometimes it's like, oh, I forgot that this character existed, which is really important. But sometimes I have these incredible beta readers who are like, I think you should move chapter 6 to chapter 2. And I'm like, oh my God, that fixes so much, right? So having people who are willing to put in the work to read something that is a work in progress, that is incomplete, to make it better, is such a powerful supportive mechanism for creators. I actually just did a full beta read for one of my friends who's beta read me. And so it's very much a collaborative process where I read her entire like 100,000 word novel in 3 days because I was just like, I want to read it quick.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So it's different in a Google Doc than it is in like a Kindle or something. But I did 500 comments, half of which were just like emojis of like, this is fire, you know, because as a creator.
I would hate to see her email inbox getting those notifications from Google.
But you desire it, but you also fear it, right? Like there's such a vulnerability in the first moment that you send that link to somebody. Like writing is such a solitary process that to have somebody who's willing to invest their time and their energy and their brain into something that feels like you are slicing out your heart and putting it onto paper and expecting people to hate it. Just like the beta reading process can be so stressful, but also so supportive and beautiful. So beta readers, both as a creator and as a reader, it's a really exciting and beautiful process.
Oh, love that.
What about you, Nikki? What are you shipping right now?
I am shipping like book giveaway specials. More specifically, there was one earlier this month. We are recording this in August. So in early August, there was one on prolific works. It was called like Summer Nights. It had like 30 different authors that were contributing a book to it. And essentially, like some of these books were like almost like prequel novellas to existing series. And some of them were like the kickoffs to new series. And I love reading them because I always find ones by authors I already know and authors I already love, but it's always an opportunity in a very like kind of like low risk environment because these are free downloads and they're novellas to like find new authors. Because there's definitely, I picked up probably 30 different new novellas from this giveaway. Signing up for those authors' email lists, following them on Amazon, like reading these books and kind of deciding, okay, cool, like is this, an author that I might want to start following. And I think you mentioned it earlier too, like there might be things that tropes that you don't like, but then you find someone who can do it really well. I took a risk on some genres that I don't typically read, and some of them really worked out. I'm like, oh, absolutely. I will 100% read it, this author's version of that. Mm-hmm. And other ones I was like, yeah, it's just like with olives. I do not like olives, but I keep trying olives every so often to see if I've changed my mind. I have not changed my mind. I think olives are disgusting.
Same.
But, I keep trying different genres and going back to ones that I don't really like to see if, maybe there's an olive version.
I mean, maybe you don't like olives, but you like a tapenade, right? I love olive oil. So there are different ways that you can prepare the same ingredient.
Maybe it'll show up in some way. So I am loving these kind of like author giveaway promotional periods, especially when they're themed. This one was called Summer Nights. So it was all kind of themed around this idea of like something happened on a hot summer night that was like a trigger. So there's like a lot of stories set like on beach houses, and there was like a lot of them that are set at like summer fairs and things like that. And then as we get closer to Halloween, there's definitely going to be ones that are like spooky supernatural themes. So I'm looking forward to those. So I love a good giveaway promotion. That's it for us today. Thank you so much for listening. Go check us out on Substack, Instagram, and TikTok at First Dates and Soulmates. Become a patron. Support artists by becoming patrons of the arts. You too could be a Medici. And we will catch you next week when we get to talk to Dear Plant Daddy author Shanae Howard. Very excited for this conversation, and we will see you next week.
Bye.